Zethkar materialized in the shadows of Research Station Delta 7, his obsidian form rippling with bioadaptive camouflage. The Vorthak Empire's most elite telepath had infiltrated thousands of worlds, broken countless minds, and never once encountered true resistance. Tonight would be different. His third eye pulsed with violet energy as he scanned the facility's neural signatures. Most humans slept, their minds broadcasting simple dreams and fears. Pathetic one's signature burned brighter than the rest of the human working alone in Laboratory C12. Dr. Sarah Chen sat hunched over her neural mapping console, surrounded by floating holographic brain scans and psychological profiles. Coffee steamed beside her keyboard as she analyzed the latest batch of consciousness studies. The facility's lights had dimmed hours ago, leaving her workspace in a pool of blue-white illumination. She paused, fingers hovering over the interface, and tilted her head slightly. Something felt different. The air carried a subtle charge, like the moment before lightning strikes. Zethkar pressed himself against the laboratory's outer wall, his form shifting to match the metal paneling. Through the reinforced glass, he observed his target, a female human mid-30s, unremarkable by galactic standards. Her mind would crack like dried clay under his probe. He extended his consciousness, feeling for the familiar pathways of thought and memory. The initial touch was gentle, almost loving. Most species never felt the first intrusion. Sarah's hand moved to her temple, rubbing in small circles. "Interesting," she murmured to the empty room. "I haven't felt a migraine coming on in months." She continued typing, but her posture straightened slightly. Her breathing deepened. Anyone watching might think she was simply concentrating harder on her work. Zethkar pushed deeper, seeking the control centers of her mind. The telepathic probe slipped through Sarah's surface thoughts like a knife through silk. Zethkar tasted her recent memories, boring research data, concern for a colleague's illness, wondering if she'd locked her apartment door. Human minds were so linear, so predictable. He began mapping her neural architecture, cataloging weaknesses and pressure points. The Empire's invasion fleet would need detailed psychological profiles to break humanity's will. Sarah saved her work and leaned back in her chair. "You know," she said conversationally, "most people knock before entering someone's mind." Her tone was casual, as if discussing the weather. She didn't look toward the wall where Zethkar hid. Instead, she pulled up a new file on her screen, a detailed analysis of telepathic species and their hunting patterns. Zethkar's probe faltered for a microsecond. The alien telepath steadied himself. Humans sometimes exhibited minor psychic sensitivity, but nothing that could threaten a trained operative. He dove deeper, seeking her core memories and emotional foundations. The probe encountered something unexpected, not resistance, but layers. Her mind folded in on itself like origami, revealing new depths behind each thought. Fear lived beside curiosity, logic intertwined with intuition, and beneath it all, something else watched. "The fascinating thing about telepathy," Sarah continued, pulling up brain scans of various species, "is how it assumes minds work. Like computers, input, processing, output, but human consciousness isn't a machine." She highlighted a particular neural pathway. "We evolved from prey animals. You see, our minds learned to hide, to misdirect, to create false trails. We call it intuition, but it's really just weaponized paranoia." Zethkar's probe encountered what felt like a mirror. His own thoughts reflected back at him, his confidence, his contempt for inferior species, his secret fear of failure. The reflection was perfect, too perfect. He tried to withdraw, but the mirror followed, showing him deeper aspects of himself he'd never acknowledged. The hunt wasn't going according to plan. Sarah stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the starfield. "Take this moment. For instance, you're probably wondering how I know you're there. The answer is simple: I don't. But my amygdala has been firing warning signals for the past 10 minutes. My ancestors would have called it a gut feeling. Scientists call it subconscious pattern recognition. You call it impossible." The telepathic probe was trapped now, caught in feedback loops of Zethkar saw himself through human eyes, a predator reduced to prey, a hunter become the hunter. The laboratory's walls seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. How was this primitive creature turning his own abilities against him? He pushed harder, seeking to break through her defenses with brute psychic force. Sarah's reflection smiled in the window. "Force won't work. You're thinking like a warrior, but this is a chess game." She turned back to her console and opened a file labeled "Psychological Warfare, Theoretical Applications." Humans spent millennia learning to lie to themselves. We convinced ourselves that charging mammoths with pointed sticks was a good idea. We told ourselves that the monster in the dark wasn't real while simultaneously preparing for its attack. The alien's probe recoiled as if burned. Sarah's mind wasn't just defended, it was actively hostile. Every thought carried barbs. Every memory had teeth. Her consciousness felt like a spider's web, beautiful and deadly, designed to trap unwary visitors. Zethkar realized with growing horror that he was the fly. "The Empire's greatest weakness," Sarah said. "Accessing classified files on xenopsychology, is assuming that superior technology equals superior thinking. But evolution doesn't create perfect predators, it creates perfect survivors. And humans are the most successful survivors this galaxy has ever produced. Zethkar tried to sever the connection, but Sarah's mind clung to his probe like a parasite. He felt her consciousness seeping into his own thoughts, examining his memories, learning his weaknesses. The violation was complete and terrifying. In all his centuries of telepathic dominance, he'd never experienced being read. The sensation was nauseating. Sarah pulled up a star chart showing the Vorthak Empire's territories. Your species conquered through mental superiority. You read minds, predicted actions, broke wills, but you never learned to hide because you never needed to. You broadcast your intentions like a beacon. She traced invasion routes with her finger. We've been listening to your thoughts for months. The revelation hit Zethkar like a physical blow. The human research station wasn't just studying consciousness, it was studying him. His probe writhed in Sarah's mental grasp, desperate to escape, but every attempt to flee only revealed more of his own vulnerabilities. She was dissecting his mind with surgical precision. The beautiful irony, Sarah continued, is that you came here to assess our mental defenses, but you walked into a trap designed by creatures who've been paranoid for millions of years. We saw you coming before you even left your ship. She highlighted energy signatures on her screen, stealth technology that should have been undetectable. Zethkar's form began to shimmer as his camouflage failed. Panic flooded his system, a emotion he'd never experienced. The probe was burning now, Sarah's mind consuming his telepathic energy like acid. He could feel her thoughts spreading through his consciousness, mapping every neural pathway, cataloging every fear. Sarah opened a communication channel to the station's command center. This is Dr. Chun. Our visitor has arrived. Initiating protocol. She spoke calmly, as if reporting routine maintenance. Subject is a class of telepath. Species designation. Psychological profile suggests extreme narcissism and overconfidence. Recommend immediate containment. The laboratory's walls came alive with containment fields, trapping Zethkar in a web of energy. But the physical prison was nothing compared to the mental one. Sarah's consciousness held his probe in a vice grip, feeding him an endless stream of human thoughts, chaotic, contradictory, and utterly alien. He experienced every human emotion simultaneously. Love and hate, fear and courage, hope and despair. You wanted to understand human minds, Sarah said, her voice now carrying harmonics that suggested she wasn't entirely human anymore. Let me show you what we really are. The probe was pulled deeper, past conscious thought into the realm of pure instinct. Zethkar felt himself drowning in humanity's collective unconscious. The alien telepath screamed, a sound that existed only in the telepathic realm. His carefully constructed mental barriers crumbled under the assault of human chaos. Sarah's mind was a weapon forged by evolution, designed to destroy any predator foolish enough to attempt mental dominance. He was being consumed from within. Every nightmare you've ever had, Sarah whispered. Every doubt you've suppressed. Every fear you've denied, we've been feeding on them, growing stronger, preparing for this moment. Her eyes reflected the laboratory's lights like mirrors, showing Zethkar infinite versions of his own terror. The probe began to fragment, pieces of Zethkar's consciousness breaking away like ice in a storm. He felt his identity dissolving, his memories scattered across Sarah's neural network. The human mind was a black hole, consuming everything it touched. He tried to scream for help, but his voice was lost in the chaos of human thought. Sarah's form began to multiply, her reflection appearing in every surface of the laboratory. You see, we learned something important about predators, she said, her voice coming from everywhere at once. They're only dangerous when they're hunting. When they become prey, they're remarkably fragile. Each reflection smiled with teeth that seemed too sharp. Zethkar's physical form began to convulse as his mind collapsed. The containment fields kept him upright, but his consciousness was being shredded by human psychology. He felt Sarah's thoughts carving through his memories like a surgeon's scalpel, extracting everything useful and discarding the rest. The Empire will come looking for you, Sarah said, accessing his memories of the invasion fleet. They'll find your ship, your logs, your mission parameters, but they won't find you, because you're going to be part of us now. The probe was pulled deeper into her consciousness, past the point of no return. The alien telepath made one final desperate attempt to escape, pouring all his remaining strength into severing the connection. But Sarah's mind was relentless, a trap that only grew stronger as its prey struggled. He felt his essence being absorbed, his thoughts becoming part of humanity's collective defense. Don't worry, Sarah said gently, her voice now carrying echoes of Zethkar's own memories. We'll take good care of your knowledge. Every invasion route, every weakness, every secret the Empire thought was safe. It's all ours now. The probe was completely consumed, leaving only empty space where Zethkar's consciousness had been. The Vorthak operative's body collapsed, his mind a hollow shell. Sarah watched dispassionately as the containment fields powered down and medical teams arrived. She'd learned everything she needed to know about the Empire's capabilities, their fears, their blind spots. The information would be invaluable for humanity's defense. Log entry 847, Sarah dictated to her computer as the medical team carried away the catatonic alien. Telepathic species show remarkable vulnerability to recursive feedback loops. Subject experienced complete mental breakdown when confronted with human psychological chaos. Recommend further study of weaponized consciousness. Hours later, on the bridge of the Empire's flagship, Admiral Korvex received the last transmission from his scout. The message was brief and transmitted in panicked bursts. Abort mission. Humanity is not what we thought. Their minds are not just unpredictable, they are predatory. We cannot win this war. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving only static. Admiral Korvex stared at the communications console, his 4 eyes reflecting the bridge's crimson lighting. In 3 centuries of conquest, the Empire had never encountered a species that could turn telepathy against itself. The implications were terrifying. Navigation, the Admiral commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Plot a course away from human space. Maximum distance. He paused, considering the implications of retreat, and sent a message to the High Council. Mark humanity's territory as forbidden space. The navigation officer's tentacles danced across his console. What classifications should I use, Admiral? He asked, his voice trembling slightly. The Empire had dozens of threat categories, from minor obstacles to extinction-level dangers. Admiral Korvex watched the starfield shift as his fleet changed course. Somewhere in that vast darkness, humanity waited with minds that could consume telepaths like paper and flame. Classification: Apex Predator, he said finally. Mentally hostile. Avoid entirely. The message was transmitted across the Empire's vast network, carried by quantum entanglement to every world, every fleet, every outpost. Within hours, the greatest telepathic civilization in the galaxy had placed humanity on the ultimate blacklist, not as prey, not as primitives, but as something far more dangerous. Back on Research Station Delta 7, Dr. Sarah Chen reviewed the data from her encounter with the Vorthak scout. The alien's memories painted a picture of an empire built on mental domination, now crippled by fear of a species they'd underestimated. It was almost poetic justice. She opened a new file on her computer and began typing. Psychological warfare applications. Phase 2. Now that we've established defensive capabilities, we need to consider offensive applications. If human minds can consume telepathic predators, what else can we hunt? The station's lights dimmed as the night cycle began, but Sarah continued working. Outside her window, the stars gleamed like scattered diamonds, each one potentially hiding threats to humanity's future. But now she knew something the Empire didn't. In the chess game of survival, humans had just promoted their pawns to queens. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity's true nature was no longer hidden. They were not just survivors, but the ultimate predators of the mind. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, other species were about to learn what it meant to be hunted by creatures who had weaponized their own thoughts. In the depths of space, Admiral Korvex's fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with them the knowledge that would reshape the galaxy's balance of power. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't just mentally hostile, they were evolution's perfect answer to telepathic predation. And the hunt had only just begun.